The first hint that something is wrong comes in the middle of the night, high over the Atlantic, where the cabin lights of Flight 447 glow softly against the darkness. Passengers are asleep or drifting toward it, stretched out beneath thin blankets while the hum of the Airbus A330 settles into a steady rhythm. Outside the windows, there is nothing but black sky, dense cloud formations, and storm cells that rise like walls beneath the flight path. The crew has been monitoring weather for hours, watching a chain of thunderstorms line up along the intertropical convergence zone. It's nothing unusual for this route. Paris to Rio always means a long stretch over unstable air. But tonight the storms are larger than usual, and the standard deviations in wind and temperature are more aggressive than expected. Shortly after entering the thickest part of the weather, the aircraft begins to pick up bursts of turbulence. It's rough enough to wake a few passengers. In the cockpit, the pilots maintain their course, adjusting altitude slightly in an effort to keep the ride manageable. Rain streaks across the windshield. Lightning flickers against cloud banks that rise higher than the plane can safely climb. What happens next unfolds over just a few minutes, but the chain reaction begins with something deceptively simple: ice. High-altitude ice crystals, common in this region, begin to clog the aircraft's pitot tubes, the small sensors that feed the plane's airspeed information to the flight computers. When the tubes freeze, the data becomes unreliable. Alarms trigger, the autopilot disconnects. Control of the aircraft returns to the pilots at the exact moment visibility and stability are at their worst. Inside the cockpit, the instruments begin to disagree with one another. Airspeed appears to drop dramatically, then spikes, then falls again. The computers cannot reconcile conflicting data. Warnings erupt across the displays. The sudden loss of accurate airspeed triggers a cascade of secondary systems shifting into alternate modes, each one forcing the pilots to manage controls that normally require little attention at cruising altitude. The junior officer, who has the controls while the captain rests outside the cockpit, reacts instinctively. He pulls the nose up, trying to stabilize the plane in the turbulence. But at these altitudes, climbing too sharply robs the aircraft of airspeed, something the frozen pitot tubes can no longer measure. Within moments, the plane is on the edge of an aerodynamic stall. The captain rushes back into the cockpit. The conversation between the three men is urgent, confused, and strained by the sheer number of warnings cascading across the displays. They are fighting both the conditions outside and the aircraft's own attempts to interpret what's happening. The pilots do not realize the jet is stalling because the nose remains high, the engines are producing power, and the altitude readouts are in flux. The nose-up input continues, pushing the aircraft deeper into a stall even as the crew believes they are trying to climb away from danger. For more than 3 minutes, the jet descends through darkness, engines functioning, wings shuddering, alarms sounding continuously. The passengers are unaware of the technical details, but they feel the drop. The cabin rattles. A few people cry out. Oxygen masks never deploy because the plane is not losing pressurization, it is losing lift. The aircraft is fully stalled well above the ocean, falling faster than anyone can correct. Flight 447 disappears from radar at 2:14 a.m. local time. When the plane fails to check in, controllers suspect a communication glitch. When it misses its estimated arrival time, the situation becomes critical. Search teams are dispatched across a vast stretch of the Atlantic, an area so remote there are no nearby vessels to confirm debris. Hours turn into days. No signals come from the emergency beacons, no survivors, no floating wreckage, no clear indication of where the aircraft went down. The ocean is simply too deep, nearly 3 miles in many areas, and the terrain below is steep, jagged, and fractured by underwater mountain ranges. Families gather in airports and hotels, waiting for news that does not arrive. Weather hamstrings early search efforts. Satellites identify small pieces of debris scattered across the surface, but currents sweep them apart before ships can confirm locations. The world watches one of the largest international search operations struggle to find even a trace of the missing jet. Weeks pass before the first confirmed wreckage appears: a seat cushion, a life vest, small floating fragments. It's enough to confirm the aircraft broke apart on impact, but not enough to determine why. Without the black boxes, the flight data recorder, and cockpit voice recorder, investigators cannot reconstruct the sequence that brought down one of the most technologically advanced airliners in service. A year goes by. Then another. The search continues in intervals, each one requiring ships outfitted with submersible sonar and remotely operated vehicles capable of descending to extreme depths. The cost runs into the tens of millions. Families push for continued searches. Officials debate whether success is realistic. The ocean floor in this region is among the most difficult environments on Earth for recovery. Finally, nearly 2 years after the crash, a search vessel locates a debris field. It is deep, far deeper than earlier surveys had reached, and the wreckage is startlingly intact. Sections of fuselage rest on the seabed in near vertical positions. Personal items and structural components lie scattered across a narrow valley framed by underwater ridges. Human remains, remarkably preserved by the cold and darkness, are recovered respectfully and slowly. The black boxes are found shortly after the wreckage field is identified. Their outer casings are battered, but the memory units inside survive. When investigators analyze the data, the truth of Flight 447 emerges with painful clarity. The pitot tubes iced over, causing the autopilot to disconnect. The aircraft shifted into alternate control law. The pilots, misled by conflicting instrument data and the violent turbulence outside, did not recognize the stall. The continuous nose-up control input sealed the aircraft's fate. The jet descended from cruise altitude to sea level in about 3.5 minutes, fully stalled the entire way down. The final report does not point to a single catastrophic failure, but to a combination of weather, sensor icing, training gaps, and human confusion under extreme pressure. The tragedy prompts sweeping changes in pilot training, emphasizing high-altitude stall recognition and manual flying skills. Airlines worldwide replace the pitot tubes with more resilient models. Procedures for navigating the intertropical convergence zone are updated. For the families, the recovery brings answers, but not closure. The scale of the loss, 228 passengers and crew, is something no explanation can soften. What remains is a detailed understanding of the final minutes of Flight 447 and the lessons that followed, carried forward to prevent future crews from facing the same impossible situation. Thank you for listening to The Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.